Hi guys, and welcome to Trucking Along with Kiersey. That's me, your positive voice in trucking. Yes, I'm making a lot of videos today because I'm sitting in a meat plant, which can take forever. Not at Tyson, but Tyson stands for trucker you're sitting overnight, so we just apply that to all the different meat companies. It doesn't usually happen to me because usually when I pick up the loads, they're already late, and then I have to rush. But my 70's been killed, so sitting here is going to build up my 70-hour clock with the recaps, and if I'm sitting here long enough, I could get a full 34. But anyway, I got some questions about over the road and regional and the types of loads that we get, and I found out that people have real misconceptions about what over the road and regional are. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to give you the actual numbers of the average length of my loads and the shortest loads and the longest loads, so you have a better understanding. So stick around and I will be back. So sometimes I hear new drivers complaining that, quote unquote, I'm an over-the-road driver, I'm not a regional driver, I should be getting more miles, my load should be longer. Well, unfortunately, that's not the way it works, okay? Sometimes we have to run short loads. They don't want to run 300-mile loads. Well, guess what? That's part of it. Sorry to tell you. And a lot of people, especially like at Prime, we do team training. After you go out and you get your CDL and you come in and start training, you're on a team truck. So I think sometimes people get the misconception that that's what trucker life is, and it's definitely not like that when you go solo. People think that you're going to get those cross-country loads that are 2,000 miles, and that's not the way it works. So I'm going to tell you month to month what my average is. So far this month of November, my average load length is 607 miles, and my shortest load was 67 miles. Yes, 67 miles. My longest load was 1,005 miles. A lot of times I'll pick up drop-in hooks that are short, and they're drop-in hook on one end, and then I have to sit in the door. My fleet manager will tell me, oh, well, if you go do this short load, then I'm going to give you something bigger after this. So I did that 67-mile load, and then my next load was the 1,005 miles. But when you wind up with loads where you're picking up in the morning, and then you drop off in the middle of the day, and then you pick up your next load, you're like in 3 customers in one day. And not only is it exhausting, but it kind of eats into your clock, and you can really become resentful if you just don't do away with all that pressure you put on yourself. If you drive 300 miles in one drive shift and then you're on your way to pick up another load that's 200 miles, realize you're still driving 500 miles that day. It's just more annoying. It's more exhausting. It might be one of those days where you're rushing from place to place and you don't have time to take a shower or sit down and eat like you would like to. That's really what those shorter loads do to me over the road. In October, my average was 1,007 miles. That was a really nice month for me, October. My shortest load was 331 miles. My longest load was 1,567 miles. So when you get those longer loads, it is easier. You can plan better on where you're going to stop, that you have time to go and do your laundry and sit down and eat and take your showers. It's so much easier when you have a few days to get a load done than just picking up and delivering. Like, I'm sitting here at this meat plant right now, and I'm going to have to drive 530 miles in one drive shift. And Lord knows when they're going to get done, so I'm going to have to drive straight from here to there, and I really wanted a shower, but it's not going to happen. That's November and October. Then we have September. September, my average was 781 miles. My shortest load was 259 miles. My longest load was 1,628 miles. And that's another, I'm satisfied with that. Most of the loads were longer, so I can deal with that. In June, June was a sucky month for me. My average load was 478 miles. And that means the majority of my loads, I was picking up, driving straight there and dropping off, and picking up and driving straight there and dropping off. And it was pretty chaotic, and it sucked. Flat out, it sucked. You know, it would just seem like an everyday thing in June. But I hear new drivers complaining, saying, I shouldn't get 300-mile loads. Where are my 1,900-mile loads? Where are my 2,000-mile loads? Doesn't work like that. At least not at this company. I know other people at other companies that'll say that, you know, they get longer miles, but sometimes they'll get one load that's 1,800 miles, and that's all they get that week. So when you're researching companies, ask the drivers specifically. Go to a truck stop and ask the drivers, what kind of miles do you get every week? You know, what's your average length of load? Make sure you write it down, and make sure you understand what's being said. I said in the recruiting video that sometimes people hear what they want to hear, not necessarily is what is told to them. Like, I have a friend who was told that he would be eligible for a certain dedicated route after his first 30 days. He took that to mean that he was going to get placed on that route after 30 days. That's not what was said. It was said that he was eligible, which means if they have a space that opens up, that he would be eligible and he would be a candidate for that. It didn't mean that in 30 days he was going to be moved onto that account. Understand regional. Regional doesn't necessarily mean just short loads. Regional can mean different things to different companies. Like in Prime, we do have a Northeast Regional. So they pretty much, I think they don't go below Maryland, and it stops halfway through Pennsylvania, like around Harrisburg. So, you know, that just means that those loads run in that area. And yes, because that's a shorter area, a smaller area, those loads are probably going to be shorter. A lot of times, if you're in the Northeast, you might get a flat rate, or you might get a higher per mile rate because you're dealing with traffic. You're dealing with shorter loads. It's not going to be like that at every company. Every company is going to have different parameters and different policies on how to deal with things. I had a friend who drove tanker at a hazmat company, and he lived in New Jersey, and his region, he was considered a regional driver. His region was anything east of Denver. So he was a regional driver. Most people wouldn't sit there and figure that, you know, there's a region that's 2,000 miles across, but that's the way it worked with his company. Also, something to understand is that some of these regional jobs where they say home every weekend, it's not a full weekend like people understand. Now, some companies, you might be home on Friday and you go back on the road on Monday. That's a full weekend. But there are other companies that will say, well, you'll get a 34 at home. You have to understand what that means. Like, if you say you get home, you drove all night on Friday night, you get home at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning, 24 hours would be 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning. So 10 hours later would be 6 o'clock at night. So you're getting home at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, and you have to leave back out at 6 o'clock at night on Sunday. And remember, you drove all night on Friday night into Saturday, so you have to sleep. And then, you know, that means you're sleeping during the day when your family's up. And then you're going to have to sleep before you leave out on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. You're going to have to sleep Sunday afternoon so that you can drive out and drive all night, Sunday night into Monday morning. So, understand that you really need to sit down and question the trucking companies and even question their drivers on how things work. Because home every weekend might not be a full weekend that you're thinking. Like, I had a friend that, yes, he was home every other weekend. It was 4 days a month. So he would go out for 2 weeks, he'd come back and be home for Saturday and Sunday, and then go back out for 2 weeks and be home Saturday and Sunday. So he wasn't home more. I just beat. He wasn't home more than an over-the-road driver. He was just home more often. That plays a difference. And when you're talking about over-the-road and home time, a lot of these companies will allow you 4 or 5 days off after driving for 4 weeks or so. So keep in mind, the first day when you come home, all you want to do is sleep. The second day you have to do your laundry, and then you have to go shopping and restock your truck so you can go back out. So you got 2 days to then spend with your family and do what you want to do before you have to go back to sleep so that you can get back out on the road. This is part of the reality of trucking that people don't understand. When you're newer and you're over the road, sometimes you're going to have to take those short little runs. Like I said, November so far, my shortest run was 67 miles. And he basically told me, I'm giving you a longer load because of that. That might happen to you in the beginning. You might get short run after short run after short run. You might have to speak up and say, hey, I need a break. You need to give me a longer run. That goes back to video about building a relationship with your fleet manager to get more miles, and build a better understanding with dispatch and have him understand you. And, they don't know what's going on in the truck. So they can't tell when you're sleeping or if you slept or if you need more sleep or if you're sick. You have to make sure you communicate that with them. Something else that people ask me about is the difference between solo, super solo, and team loads. So basically, if you're going, and I'll do my calculator because somebody said my math was wrong when I gave examples in one of my other videos. So say you average 55 miles per hour. We have 11 hours to drive. In a 24-hour period, you get 10 hours off. So you can drive your 11, take a 10-hour break, and then you still have hours that you can drive that would be on your next clock. So basically, that's 14 hours in a 24-hour period times 55 miles per hour, which for a solo driver comes out to 770 miles that you can do in 24 hours. Okay? Now, that's just actual drive. That's not including you stopping to go to the bathroom or going to the customer or anything like that. That's just, 11 hours plus the other 3 in the 24-hour period. So, if you have a team truck, right, each one of you can do 11 hours in a 24-hour period. So, 22 times 55 miles per hour is 1,210 miles that a team can do in 24 hours. Now, when it comes to super solo, that's like somewhere in between. What we seem to use super solo for, or at least what my fleet manager seems to use super solo for, is when I get a new driver as a teammate and we're in training. It allows, a super solo allows me to train somebody where we're trying to build up that person's stamina. So say the person hasn't driven 300 or 400 miles at one time before and they need to build up. He might be able to drive 300 miles and say the load itself had 800 on it. He wouldn't have been able to drive 800 miles in a full drive shift. But if he drives 300 miles, then I can drive the other 500 miles on my full shift. So I'm on the truck and available to drive if the time is needed. If I have a student that he does 500 or 550 miles on his drive shift, that's awesome. He's doing great. And then I can go take up the slack of the difference of whatever he couldn't drive. And I use them with my fleet manager as a training tool to build up. I don't know any companies that use super solos as a normal thing. If you guys drive and you work at a company that does it normally, please comment down below, because technically, you know, they'd have to pay that truck as a team truck. So you're getting less miles, and then you split the pay. So, but then the company would be paying benefits and workers' comp and insurance and all that for 2 people, but they're not getting a full team load. They're not getting full team representation there. Basically, a solo person can do 770, maybe more, depending on what the truck is governed at. I've done, I think, 825 was the maximum I've ever done in a 24-hour period. 1,200 miles for teams in a 24-hour period. Team loads, some of them can be really, really rushed. Sometimes we pick up FedEx loads, and you have to go from like Dallas, Texas, up to New Jersey, to Newark, New Jersey, and you only have time to stop to run to the bathroom and fill the truck, and that's it. There is no downtime. There is no waiting. There are some loads that are high value loads. Those are other types of loads that are very time sensitive. You're not allowed to stop for the first 250 miles, 200 miles, depends on the company's policies, because they want to make sure nobody's following you. Say you pick up from like a pharmaceutical company. Any kind of person that's watching that knows that they're going to be transporting drugs there, medications, would then possibly follow you. You know, they make sure that you're driving for 200 miles and you're constantly making sure that you're not being followed. And you have to do a specific route. A lot of those have time restrictions on them where, say, you're not allowed to shut down for more than 2 hours. One person always has to be with the truck. So if you stop and say you want to get a shower, one person has to go in and get the shower, then the other person comes out and stays with the truck and the load. Then the other person has to go in and take a shower. And you have to make sure that whole time frame doesn't take more than 2 hours. There's different kinds of loads. We have a floral division, and I've never done a floral load, but they are team loads, and some of them, the drivers have to unload themselves. I don't want a floral load. I have no intention of doing a floral load, so... And no Hippie Truck and Transport, he hates floral loads. Yeah, I beeped again. But, so there's different kinds of loads, and there's different kinds of accounts that you can go to at different companies. A lot of the dedicated accounts, places like Family Dollar, Dollar General, we don't have them at Prime. I think it's Schneider that has one of them. They'll have a push for people to do these loads and these accounts. And, you know, the recruiters, they need to find people to fill those accounts. And what they don't tell the people is you're going to be unloading and you're going to be driving. And it's going to be hard in the beginning just to learn the driving. And then you have to get out and unload. So you're going to be exhausted. And all of these places you're backing into are really small. Like, go drive to a few Dollar Generals or a few Family Dollars and see the kind of layout. And a lot of Dollar Generals, you're in the middle of the parking lot with all the cars, so you need enough swing room. And when you're new, you really don't, I talked about this several times, you don't have the judgment for that swing room. So a lot of times those accounts aren't a good idea for a new person. But I hope that gives you some insight into the different types of loads, the length of loads, the regional loads. Region could just be somebody's hiring area. Dedicated routes. We have a dedicated route that goes from Michigan to Tennessee and back again. And those guys, in Prime, it seems like all the dedicated are in the lightweight trucks, not the full size. You make more per mile in the lightweight trucks. That particular count, those guys are getting 3,000 miles a week. Like, almost guaranteed. You can't necessarily do that on a weekly basis over the road. At Prime, you can, but you really need to manage your time. And it takes time to learn how to manage your time. So, yeah, so like I pretty much average about 28 to 2,900 miles a week, which, you know, for me, that's fine. $1,500 a week, something like that, when the bonuses are all paid. I'm cool with that. I've showed some of my pay stubs online. I hope I answered your questions. And if I didn't, then comment down below and tell me what I missed. And I hope to see you out here trucking along. Bye.